invisible God becomes man. That's what the incarnation is. And the Catechism tells us that there's 4 reasons for the incarnation. God took on human flesh. And you read these, hopefully. I would say perhaps 4 of the most important paragraphs in the Catechism, 456 to 460. Why the incarnation? Incarnation is the center of the Catholic faith. There would be no Christianity if there was no incarnation. So we should ask, why did Jesus do this? Well, besides the chicken farming idea, 4 things. Sin is real. Sin is a problem from the fall of Adam and Eve through all of creation. Sin has ruptured our relationship with God. So Jesus came to reconcile us to the Father, to fix the problem of sin, to bring us back to Him. Secondly, He came to show us the love of the Father. He tells us and He shows us God's love. And ultimately, He tells us that the greatest gift of love is to lay down your life for another. And He does this ultimately for us. Thirdly, so reconcile us to the Father, shows the love of the Father. Thirdly, to be a model of holiness. He's telling us how to be holy, but He's also showing us how to be holy. Excuse me. Jesus shows us the way, He tells us the truth, and He shows us how to have life. But He also is the way, the truth, and the life. And so when we go to Jesus, we can have the help to live out the calling that He commands us to do. The Christian life isn't difficult. It's impossible. But God calls us to do impossible things. And He gives us the grace to do these things, this incredible high calling. And the 4th thing, the most amazing of them all, is that God calls us to be partakers in the divine nature. The very life of God comes into us. And this is a remarkable thing, totally unique. The life of God, the essence of who He is, comes into us. And so we're able to do God-like things. The love of God dwells in us in a real way through baptism and through many ways following. So, we talked about the Old Testament a little bit last week. God comes down to mankind. He does things, He says things, and He stoops down to our level. But in Christ, He raises us up. He raises us up to who He is. And so this is what the incarnation is about. But without the Old Testament, we'd miss a lot of the incarnation. We would miss what's leading up to it, the purpose. So I talked about it as for this reason, leading up to fulfillment. And last week I said St. Augustine's quote, that in the Old Testament, the new is concealed, and in the new, the old is revealed. And we have to remember that Jesus is the fulfillment of everything God has done thus far. So we talked about the priesthood. I'm just going to briefly go over a few of these things. The purpose of the priesthood, a priest is one who offers sacrifice. And there's different characters that we see in Scripture. We see Melchizedek, who's this priest king who offers bread and wine. And then later, we see that Christ is a priest in the order of Melchizedek. We have Abraham and Isaac. Abraham was put to the test by God. After he'd been given a son who had been promised, it was his only son, and God said, I will bless you, I will give you many, 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 many offspring and generations. Now I want you to go kill your son. Offer him up as a sacrifice. So Abraham, okay, when he goes to do what God has commanded him, and he said, don't hurt him. It was a test of faith. But here Abraham takes Isaac up this mountain, and this mountain happens to be in the same chain of mountain ranges that Calvary is on, which is where Jesus later offers himself up to the Father. So we see this fulfillment of this almost sacrifice of Isaac and Jesus, who is a descendant of Isaac. We talked about the Levitical priesthood, the offering, the sin offering with Moses, and then later the thank offering with David. And the sacrifice of the priesthood, what did they offer? They offered a lamb. It had to be a certain kind of lamb, not just any lamb. The lamb without any broken bones, without spot, without blemish. So Christ is also the lamb. We call him the Paschal Lamb. What does that mean, Paschal? And let's see. Paragraph 1324 references this. Thought I put it on the outline, but it doesn't look like it. the Passover lamb. Moses celebrated the first Passover. This was the night before he led the Israelites out of bondage, of slavery, out of Egypt. And Christ celebrates the same Passover before leading us out of the bondage of sin. And he passes over to the Father in his death. And so Jesus is the new Passover meal. But the importance of the old Passover meal was slaying the lamb and then eating it. You had to eat the lamb. And so Jesus, in the new Passover meal, says that we must eat this meal as well. And this is the Eucharist that he institutes at the Passover. So let's look a little bit more at the end, the way Jesus dies. So we call this the Paschal mystery. Jesus is our Paschal lamb. And the Paschal mystery is four things: the suffering, also called the Passion, the suffering, the death, the resurrection, and the ascension of Christ. And we also talk about redemption, talk about salvation and atonement. We have been slaves to sin, and Jesus redeems us. He buys us back. He saves us. He saves us out of something for something. And atonement means that we are made at one with God. Remember, there's a rupture, and God brings us back to him through Christ. So this all happens with Jesus' death. And we've been talking about this being a sacrifice. But I want you to pretend now that you're a first century Jew, and you're seeing Jesus. He's being crucified. If you saw this happen, you wouldn't be seeing a sacrifice. You'd be seeing a murder. You'd be seeing someone's life being taken, an execution. And if you were a follower of him, maybe you would see a martyrdom. This guy really believed, and he was being killed for his beliefs. But why a sacrifice? See, there's a problem here. If you remember last week, we talked about the temple. The temple was the place of sacrifice. There was no sacrifice outside the walls of the city. But Jesus was crucified outside the walls of the city. So why would anybody think this is a sacrifice? But it is indeed a sacrifice because it's a sacrifice of the new covenant. Jesus isn't bound by the temple, but he's extending the purpose of the sacrifice to all people, not just the Jews. First the Jews, and then everyone else, the Gentiles. So the Paschal mystery, we look at this 3-day event, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Jesus is killed on Friday, and then he raises on Easter Sunday. And we call this the Triduum, which means is that right? I'm not a good speller. All right, so the 3 in 1. It's 3 days, but it's really one event. It's really one event. So it's a pretty awesome time of year. And if you come into the church, you come in on Easter Sunday right after this 3-day event. And so I'm going to talk more about it later down the road.